has touched me inappropriately.
He was cuddling with this 13-year-old boy and licking his face.
Although just a virtual place to meet, VRChat hosts the most disturbing individuals you'll ever encounter. This video will cover the worst of the worst, starting with... In early 2024, a user by the name of Cosmo is seen hanging around in a VRChat world called Furry Talk and Chill, a place where people gather and interact over their shared interests in human-like animal avatars. Everything seems fine until a user known as an extremely racist and twisted individual shows up and drags Cosmo into a rabbit hole far more disturbing than anyone could ever imagine.
The white race is the only race capable of generating children that can learn everything fast enough to actually generate and create heaven.
Kitsune Cell, also known as Richard, is a 34-year-old man said to be living in Washington. At first glance, Cell already doesn't really fit in within the likes of an ordinary person at all. He's a self-proclaimed furry who also likes to act like the smartest person that's ever existed.
When I was in elementary school, I studied every single science: math, programming, medicine, engineering, and electrical engineering. And I figured out that the afterlife is physically measurable, derivable using science, and the only physical way to make it good is for everyone to become as intelligent as I am specifically.
And he also has 2 Twitter accounts, one of which he uses to post explicit images of human-like animal characters. But while things already look off on the surface, many of his victims would later realize that Cell is someone everyone should have stayed away from. Although Cell seems like a strange but harmless person, it doesn't take long before Cosmo starts to see his true colors. At first, the conversation feels normal. There's just a normal back and forth. But over time, Cell actually starts saying more and more disturbing things. Cosmo doesn't catch on at first, but eventually it becomes clear that the friendly act was all just a facade.
Your hole is exactly length from your sigmoid. You want from you? Okay. Also, everyone wants that. Even me, who was extremely against that act. Because it seemed to me like it was stupid that men couldn't just not be gay. Ah, so you would. I would. But you know I'm 16, right? That makes you less rotten. You're supposed to be single at 14.
This is just one of their conversations, and Cell would also randomly send Discord messages to Cosmo from his main account, making it obvious how openly racist he is.
Feeling like murder. And Mexicans and Russians and have been annoying me all day. They're trying to make worse, as they always do. No reason for any of them to live.
At some point, Cell actually tells Cosmo that he's 24. Cosmo, who's only 16 at the time, believes him, and sometime after, Cell decides to send a photo of himself with absolutely nothing on him at all. And Cosmo wouldn't be the only victim.
I just stood up and looked at myself in the mirror and didn't move. I just didn't move an inch, and he just basically just me, and that was it.
Soon after, Cell would also talk to Fluffy, and they would actually develop a relationship that was way deeper. The two were actually dating.
So are you. Anyways, good night, master. Good night, my love. See you tomorrow. Love you. Yes, I'll see you later, babe. Kisses. I love you. I love you too. Sorry for not responding this late. I was watching YouTube. Hug emoji. Hey, how are you? Annoyed. Pain. Disgusted by the existence of even one guy.
Fluffy only decided to reveal his messages to the public on his 14th birthday, which means every single one of them was sent when he was still a year younger. And creepily enough, this isn't the worst part of what Cell had been saying to Fluffy at the time. When asked about how young of a person Cell would go for, this is his response.
How young would you go if I'm allowed to ask though? I need the youngest available. They need to be attached to our group as closely as physically possible. Would even 7 be okay? Yes.
And even after that, Cell just keeps going, forcing his twisted ideas onto anyone he talks to. And in one conversation that Fluffy points out, which I'm not gonna fully show, Cell says one of the most messed up things a human could ever say.
The only physical way to a female is to rape her. No female would ever agree to birth a child.
But that's not all that he's capable of doing. He would later be seen having a minor believed to be 8 years old in his VR world. The same world where he's seen caressing other people as well, who are most likely not of age.
Hi, friend.
Hey, Giggler.
Oh, shit.
dude, this one's like 8 years old. Nah, no way.
Among the people Cell targeted, one in particular stands out though. Someone we'll call Mittens. He claims that Cell exploited him for over a year and even shares what Cell looked like back when he was younger compared to how he looks now at 34. In FFI's video, he even talks about the time he caught Cell doing unspeakable things to a boy on VRChat.
He was cuddling with this 13-year-old boy and like licking his face and doing with him, and I was just there watching, and it was horrible. And eventually the boy left and he was like, it takes a long time to get these monkeys to listen to you, and get the on the floor and let me them.
And when Cell gets into a conversation about what age is the right age to safely reproduce, he says this without hesitation.
So the younger they are, the better the quality?
Yeah, pretty much.
Fortunately, his VRChat account will later get banned in late August of 2024. But even with all of these warnings life throws at him, the first thing he does right after is just make another account, which is called DevX, the same name he used on Discord in those earlier conversations. However, on September 12, 2024, someone named Ben, who's 15 years old, also comes forward and talks about meeting Cell in July through an unknown account called Megathon. And it's actually confirmed to be Cell's account after he tells Ben to add him on his DevX account. And the conversation, like almost every other one, would end up escalating to a point where Cell would ask Ben for pictures of himself. And they would also do unspeakable things on VRChat.
He has touched me inappropriately, well, in VR obviously, and has tried to do, he has done the with me.
Months actually passed by after all of this, and there aren't any news about Cell since, until this happens. On June 1st, 2025, a clip of Cell talking to VRChat users gets posted on YouTube, where he now goes by his new account name Cell Fox, and he says this.
Made 6-year-olds their religion. Their actual religion in the United States is having sex with 6-year-olds. So younger than 6 is advised.
Now there are rumors about the police being alerted about him, considering that his identity is documented on the internet to such a detail, but actually arresting him will probably be a difficult task to do, which wasn't the case for our next VRChat user. He's in prison.
A 15-year-old girl in Florida.
What?
He met her online 2 years ago and met her for... He's 36.
It's September 27, 2020, 4 p.m. The police arrive at a quiet house in Hernando County. They step inside and head toward the bedroom of the 15-year-old girl living there with her parents. Once inside, they open the closet door and they find a man hiding inside. 36-year-old Jonathan Rosmoyne, a Louisiana man with a dark secret. But how did this even happen? It all began in VRChat 2 years prior. Jonathan, 34-year-old back then, was spending time in one of the VRChat worlds when he meets a girl. For our sake, we're gonna call her Emily. At first, everything was harmless. Just two people talking in a virtual world. Emily at first told him though that she was 18, and Jonathan didn't question it. But what began as a casual conversation slowly became something more. They started talking more often, opening up, and before long they had this emotional connection going on. And over time, this connection deepened until it turned into a full-on romantic relationship. Emily started calling Jonathan her boyfriend. Eventually though, this VRChat digital relationship wasn't enough for them. They wanted more, and so they made plans to take it to the next level, which was to meet in person. But somewhere along the way, the truth came out. Emily admitted that she wasn't 18, but 3 years younger. And despite that fact, their relationship didn't stop. Jonathan simply didn't care. He continued on, and Emily continued calling him her boyfriend. August 19th, 2020 was the day they actually met up in person. He traveled to an entirely different state just to meet her. And once inside her house, they decided he would start living in her bedroom storage area on and off for the next month.
This guy drove from Louisiana to Spring Hill, Florida, met her. They hooked up on several occasions since they first communicated.
Whenever her parents were home, he'd squeeze into her closet, keeping quiet and staying out of sight. But the moment they left for work, things changed. When the house was empty, that's when he would come out and they would be alone. By then, they weren't just holding hands and watching movies. He was her quote-unquote boyfriend after all, and you can imagine what they did. It came to a point that they even developed a sneaky system. The plan was to keep her door locked, and she would pretend that she was still changing and use that moment to let him slip back into hiding whenever her parents were home. And at other times, he simply stayed in a van parked outside the family's home. And this would go on for more than a month. On September 27th, everything came crashing down though. The girl's parents hear a very suspicious noise coming from her bedroom, and when they walk in to investigate, they find Jonathan, a grown man hiding in their child's room. Stunned and horrified, the parents obviously pick up the phone and call the police, and officers arrest him on the spot. He's hit with multiple serious charges: 4 counts of lewd and inappropriate behavior with a minor, obscene communication, and using a computer to lure and travel to meet a child. In the end, Jonathan remains in the Hernando County Jail, held on a $25,000 bond. And once Jonathan's court case actually came to an end, he pled guilty and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. But the consequences don't even end there. He'll also be required to serve 10 years of probation upon release and register as an individual with a record of that kind of thing, which is a similar thing our next person had an arrest warrant for.
They go on to request NSFW photos from the minor, asking for a skirt picture, and then for them to pull the skirt up, all while knowing they are 16 and he is 23.
Back in 2015, a person called Eric started working at Kmart, a store chain in the United States. Having the role of the electronics department manager, he actually quickly grew attached to the place. He just loved the overall vibe and layout of the store. Now, Eric's love for his workplace grew to such an extent that he actually started recreating it in 3D using the software SketchUp. It was his own little personal project that he made just because he was passionate about it. In 2018, however, the Kmart that Eric worked at closed down, as did most of the remaining Kmart stores. But by that time, Eric managed to create a simple, low polygon render of his Kmart. It didn't have any merchandise or detail yet, but Eric just kept going at it. And a year later, by October 21st, 2019, this early version of the Kmart evolved into an actual world that was used in VRChat, the game he became addicted to back in 2017. And he went by the name Eric Cerno.
Hi there, and welcome to VRChat Kmart. I'm Eric, the store manager and creator of this place. What you are standing in is a one-to-one recreation of the real-world Kmart store I used to work at. My goal with this world is to preserve the many memories people had shopping at Kmart in real life, and bring new memories to those who have their first experience of Kmart here in VRChat.
The VRChat Kmart, that was internally still called the main store, had its soft opening as a so-called sleepover map. People were able to join and just hang out. And because the map was based on the store Eric worked at, which was initially built in 1992, the VR world also featured retro elements, like the in-store restaurant, the garden shop, and even an auto service center. It even played the era-appropriate music. And the store was a success, which is why a couple of months later, on December 19th, Eric launched the now called VRChat Kmart Express, a smaller but compatible version for both PC and Oculus Quest players. It was only a third of the size of the main store, but it had all the cozy details that reminded players of the actual Kmart. And this world was an even bigger success. So much so that Eric actually managed to build a team of people working on this Kmart world.
Why are you letting this guy impersonate being an employee? You remember hiring this guy?
Works here. Shut your goddamn
This guy does not work here, bro.
Here. Get the
Ain't no way you would hire someone who looks like that.
He was building a name for himself, and 2021 was the year where the final full-fledged version of this Kmart world dropped. It was called the Super VRChat Kmart Center and had the most detailed features so far. By this time, Eric transformed what began as really just a side project into one of the biggest worlds in VRChat at the time. At its peak, it had over 3,000 dedicated members, which was basically a quarter of the game's active player base back then. And this Kmart world would thrive for years to go on, and people would really enjoy the community feeling it had, as well as the overall experience.
Why are you at self-checkout? Is there even self-checkout in the Kmart?
Apparently. However, behind the scenes, Eric used his power as the owner to take advantage of his team members. Over on Discord, Eric befriended somebody who worked in the virtual Kmart store and played in it quite often. We're just gonna give her the name Alice. Alice wasn't of age, which can be seen by the way she introduced herself to the Kmart Discord server. But despite that fact, Eric would decide to talk to Alice more and more. And unfortunately, it would end up getting to a point where Eric would feel comfortable enough to initiate more explicit messages, also including photos. Now, Alice never reacted to these disturbing messages, and she never actually initiated any of these behaviors. But Eric would just keep going, and to be honest, these messages are pretty gruesome, and he would also demand pictures of her. Now, the fact that he was talking to her was known by a couple of people in the community, which is why in January of 2024, somebody would decide to step in and confront Eric. His ex-girlfriend messaged him, giving him the chance to talk about the allegations. But when she messaged him, he just simply implied that she was unnecessarily stirring up drama and denied all of these facts. And this would go unnoticed by the community and the police until May 2024, when everything changed. Lego Man, a very well-respected figure in VRChat and the owner of another very popular VRChat world called Uganda, decided to make a tweet where he said that he and the server would officially distance themselves from Eric. He would tell the world that Eric had actually an arrest warrant for him and allegedly fled the state of Pennsylvania to avoid the arrest, while all of his electronic devices were seized from his home following a raid. But what was this arrest warrant actually for? Well, the arrest warrant was issued for the possession of material including people not of age. So combining this with the chat logs that we just talked about, it seems like Eric wasn't the innocent guy he seemed to be. Despite him initially denying all of this, on May 22nd, his fingerprints would be taken and his bail would be set at $55,000. And he would be officially charged with 4 things: owning illicit material, sending illicit material, abuse, and the corruption of people that are not legal. The actual trial is still pending though, so Eric is obviously innocent until proven guilty. The next man did a similar thing, but he actually fully abducted his victim.
Hunter Fox needs to turn over the kid. This guy is a predator and also a member of the hobby community.
It's late November 2022 in Layton, Utah, where the McCarneys live with their normal teen son called Evan. Evan is just an average guy, plenty of friends, plays golf, and spends hours online like most kids in his age. He specifically is often on VRChat, Discord, Roblox, and even Twitter. At first, Evan's parents notice Evan spending more and more time on online games. He's always on his computer, even isolating himself from all the other people around him. But his mom, Heather, doesn't think much of it. She just figures that it's a normal part of growing up. However, what she doesn't know is that something or someone very disturbing is starting to creep around their son.
Andrea Adams spoke with the mother, and she was saying how her son was talking to this guy through video game and Oculus.
Tadashi Kura Kojima, also known as Aaron Michael Zeman, is a 26-year-old man from Tucson, Arizona. He isn't what people call a normal guy. He is a furry, and not just that, but he also posts a ton of explicit images of himself online, sometimes dressed as a furry. Terrifyingly, Aaron also hangs around Discord, Roblox, and of course VRChat. And this is exactly where he meets Evan. Aaron and Evan begin to talk and play together, and they eventually even begin to interact on other platforms like Twitter. They build a connection, you could even say a romantic one, where they eventually decide to go further and communicate on more under-the-radar messaging platforms, including Telegram, where the conversations turn even more personal.
I want to be able to make your life better by giving you something that will make you smile.
Their relationship starts to develop more and more as the days pass, no matter what happens, which could be considered the first red flag. Things are going smoothly for Aaron. He builds a connection to Evan, who's obviously not old enough to make wise decisions. That is until a certain someone starts to discover what's really happening behind her son's excessive use of his computer. On the night of November 20th, 2022, Heather, who's the mom, is getting ready for bed at home when she suddenly finds out that Evan is still using his phone well past the family's agreed lights out time at 8:30 p.m. And so she quickly comes inside the room to retrieve the phone. And this is when she suddenly hears him talking to somebody. And after taking the phone away from Evan, she hurriedly brings it to her room. "Who is texting him?" she says. And when Heather finally opens the phone, she starts getting deeply disturbed by what she found. In one text message, Heather sees that Aaron excitedly told their son that he got a new job in Utah and would be moving there very soon. And he also asked Evan for his actual location to their house and also the nearby school bus stop, all of which Evan sent over. And after finding out the back and forth messages between the two, they decide to ground Evan and take all of his electronic devices away. However, just 9 days later, they discovered that Evan used a different phone in the house to actually continue talking to Aaron. And at this point, Heather finds out that these messages were turning explicit, with Aaron sending Evan explicit videos and Evan actually replying back with explicit pictures of himself. Evan's parents are sick to their stomach and they actually decide to contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And they also decide to file a police report pulling away their teenage children out of school for a week. They're afraid that something actually might happen to Evan. And just 3 days later, the local police finally petition a state judge for a search warrant to be served to Twitter to get evidence of Evan's exploitation in the platform's records. The search warrant states that the platform has to provide all available information about the account they believe belongs to the suspect. What they don't know, however, is that they're making a huge mistake. They find out that the account name they requested never existed on the platform. Aaron's Twitter account was called Hunter Floofy Fox, but the warrant actually requested records from Hunter Fluffy Fox. And this mistake would cause 20 days of delays, which was enough time for Evan and Aaron to talk publicly on Twitter. And this time, Evan actually decided to use his family's VR headset to talk to him. On December 13th, Aaron posted a tweet saying,
"Oh my god, I love that man."
Who's not a man at the time, by the way, but a child.
"Oh my god, I love that man. I'm going to spend my life with him. I'm so lucky. We played VRChat together for about an hour today. I heard his voice for the first time since 20th November 2022. This is already the best Christmas. I love you."
Evan then replies to the tweet saying,
"He's talking about me,"
in a seemingly enthusiastic tone. And seeing Evan's response, Aaron replies,
"You, only you, always you, my lamb. I'm yours, all yours, only yours, as long as you'll have me."
And their messages become more intimate with each passing day. And Evan's parents actually remain unaware that this is still happening.
We see a lot of these cases, unfortunately, where there's this type of communication going on. Rarely does it escalate.
On December 16th, Aaron posts a tweet out of nowhere saying,
"All supplied up now. Hella up to see my man. Oop, I guess I'm a fox after all. Nah, I'm in love. I'll march beside you with my pride, my lamb. I love you with all my heart and soul. You loving you'll be in my arms soon, my love."
And the next day, Aaron tweets again,
"Damn it all. He's just the sweetest man in existence. I am too unbelievably blessed. I love him so hecking much. You hear that? I love you, Lammy."
And another 2 days later, Aaron posts another tweet.
"My lamb and I are getting married on the trail. Wee hee hee. I love you, my lamb."
Several days pass after that, and on a seemingly normal night, Ken, the father, decides to go downstairs to check on his sons after going to sleep. But his biggest fear actually comes true. "This is not right," he says, after opening the door of Evan's room and finding his blinds up and his windows open. Ken quickly climbs out of the window, desperately searching their yard for Evan, but he doesn't find him, and his passport and piggy bank are also missing. They decide to call the police, telling them that Evan's gone. In a span of 45 minutes, the police arrive, and the family and the police go around the neighborhood searching for any sign of Evan. Heather, the mother, on the other hand, goes to look at the security camera footage of their house. The system was wiped clean. Evan was probably behind that as well, so she goes door to door to ask if neighbors could check their security camera footage as well, but that is to no avail. Eventually, the police decide to issue an Amber Alert, saying that a young boy has gone missing, and Heather actually receives thousands of messages from people online, helping the family as well as the police find the Twitter accounts of the two. And it isn't until the next day that a report comes through, Someone calls in a suspicious vehicle at a gas station in Grand Island, Nebraska, nearly 800 miles from Salt Lake City, and the police actually start investigating the suspicious vehicle. And lucky for them, Evan is actually in there, safe and alive, and they immediately arrest Aaron.
Alert gas station attendant had actually thought something looked suspicious about the car and these people that were there at the gas station, called the police department, and they responded, looked into it, separated the two of them, and identified our victim in this case as being somebody who we had listed as kidnapped and missing.
The McConaughey family is finally back together, while Aaron's life ends up being changed forever. He loses everything, his cell phone, gaming devices, and his car. And at the trial, the judge gives him 15 years in prison and a lifetime of supervised release. This next person though is an active VR content creator with a disturbing past.
The things that I have done should have never happened. I ask forgiveness for God to say I have wrongs and I need to be better.
Sonic 00 started his YouTube channel back in 2016, and he would actually start streaming quite consistently in 2019, just 3 years later, with his initial username being Sonic the 5th. In his streams, he would begin with a variety of games, ranging from Minecraft, Five Nights at Freddy's, and Sonic of course. But one game would be the most dominant one on his channel, VRChat.
Give me this! Give me it!
And although it started off as a quite wholesome moment of a person just streaming and playing games, things quickly turned dark. But over the years, Sonic would start becoming more aggressive with the thumbnails and basically post borderline NSFW on there, with titles like VRChat NNN Challenge. And a lot of his streams would now contain him designing avatars for VRChat. And this is the very moment he would go way too far. To give you some context, Amanda the Adventurer is a game that went viral in 2023, with Amanda who's basically the main antagonist the game is built around. Now Amanda looks like a child, around 9 to 13 years old, but Sonic in one of his streams decided to make a version of her in VRChat that most definitely wasn't of appropriate nature, if I can put it like that. And this of course sparked major controversy within the community and the people who knew of this, which quickly prompted him to make an apology video.
Man's not really a kid, it's a demon, but it looks like one, so like people think that, and honestly, that's not way to justify at all. It's weird, okay? No way to justify that. It's weird, okay?
His first apology though was essentially saying that the character was a demon and just looked like a person who is, you know, not of age, since Amanda in the game can basically transform. But of course that wasn't really a good excuse. And the YouTuber Mro or Meow made a video about this exact situation, and Sonic Owa actually watched it and responded. But he simply defended himself by blaming his mental health, his worldview at the time, and even claimed he was going through a Satanist arc.
I was at my worst time of my life. I was dreadful. I hated everything. I was depressed. I hated. I was like becoming like a Satanist. You know, I was like, God, Satan. I don't care. This is just an avatar. This is a creation. I'm just gonna go make it. At the end of the day, I was a stupid kid going through a tough time trying to be edgy.
In total, he would apologize for this thing 3 whole times. But despite that, just months later, he would make another Amanda avatar of that caliber and publicly make a Discord post about it. And unfortunately, this isn't even the end of the story. Sonic decided to make multiple Discord servers of inappropriate nature with almost no moderation or verification of age at all. And he also decided to send inappropriate material to people not of age into a group chat, and even admitted to it on video.
Technically, I did. And I don't mean to, because again, all I was trying to do was to send something shock value. Yeah, they was minors, they was like 17.
He basically did it because of shock value. And similar to creating not appropriate VR models, he also made entire VR worlds. He built maps based on spicy games by using assets from them. And the VR world was supposed to be 18+, which would be fine in itself. As long as everybody involved is an adult, it's all good. But within 4 days after his VRChat world was public, the age limit was dropped to 15+. There were no entry barriers and no filters anymore. This prompted VRChat to actually ban his worlds, but his maps would just be re-uploaded by his friends, while Sonic would simply return under different usernames again. And to top it off, Sonic also interacted with a Twitter account known for posting drawn content of characters, again not of age. And they were drawn in a way that you can imagine isn't very appropriate. But according to him, that was merely a coincidence after all.
This was one of my friends named Radio Bloodstar. He was a minor. I followed him because he wanted me to send me a video of him talking to his friends on VRChat. I followed him, and I got it. I didn't unfollow him because, honestly, I didn't need to. Turns out, I'll come back to his shit, his thing, and this child.
He didn't know what the account posted, and it was run by his friend. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of Sonic Owo. But as of right now, in 2025, Sonic has publicly made a final video explaining how he found God and feels regret for all the things he did, saying it is now a new chapter of his life.
I'm sorry for the people I hurt, and I hope that you see me as a better man. And I hope that one day, in your heart, you can forgive me. Be well. God bless you all.
And also on his Twitter, he regularly posts Bible quotes, and it seems like he's turned into more of a wholesome person of himself. Let's all hope this is true for once. This next person, however, ran a whole cult in VRChat and exploited every single member without regret.
I don't roll about my guilt, so I know you might be scared to kill an actual person. It's up to you. I know for a fact I'm doing it again. It's too fun.
It's late August 2022, and a YouTuber by the name of Brandon FM drops a video exposing a cult disguised as a guild on VRChat. It's called the Dark Guild, and it all began with a single person, a trans woman named Alyssa Afton. In early 2021, the so-called Dark Guild, a VRChat community, springs to life under the leadership of Alyssa, and it starts off looking just like an ordinary fantasy roleplay group, with a Discord server and meetings held through their VRChat worlds. Now the Dark Guild actually grows in size relatively quickly, and new people just keep joining, and due to that fact, Alyssa manages it by splitting the groups into regions, like the European sector, where members can lead their own server for European users. And not long after, the guild welcomes users of all ages to hang out and chat in a friendly and safe environment. But with many innocent and young users joining, thinking it's a fun place to be in, they don't realize they've stepped into something they'll regret for the rest of their lives. Upon being invited in the guild by Alyssa, a contract is given to them to sign, and it states once they do, they're part of the Dark Guild for their entire lives. The guild's problems become theirs, and theirs become the guild's, and they're actually asked to help find missing people, not just characters in a game, but real people who've gone missing in real life. Some cases that have actually been abandoned by the real police, and the members of the guild are given two ways to help. They can either work behind the scenes by doing things like doxing people and digging up their usernames and addresses, or they can help in the field by tracking down the so-called criminals in real life, either to get arrested or to actually end them. And Alyssa expects full commitment, with a contract saying that they must give their life and soul for the sake of the guild. And there's also this thing called the yearly guild games, which the members are forced to join. Their mission is to recruit new members and stay loyal as things get inevitably darker. And there's even a promise of getting paid by the guild, but only if they prove that they're useful. Now, a lot of underage users sign the contract thinking it's harmless, and at the end of the day it is, since the contract isn't actually a legal one. But because of their age, they don't really know that. Months pass after the guild's foundation, and while the guild looks like a fun hangout place, on the surface, multiple users are already being exploited and manipulated by Alyssa behind the scenes. At first, she decides to talk to a couple of them in private, a lot, and over time, these conversations get more explicit.
Morning, cutie. I'm home alone. Now send... Excuse me? You heard me, lol. What?
And that is not the only time she demanded such things. It gets to a point where Alyssa manipulates them into sending videos and engaging in inappropriate activities with her on VR. Now you have to keep in mind, Alyssa is a full grown adult doing this. Following this, she takes another user as a victim of her predatory behavior, demanding that they participate in an inappropriate roleplay, also known as an ERP, and she even holds wedding ceremonies in the guild, leaving almost everyone confused about why she's marrying guild members right in front of them, considering their age. But since their leader always acts this way, people start to see it as normal, at least inside their little bubble, which is the guild itself. And somebody who used to be inside the guild even reveals that Alyssa tried to be violent in VR. She pressured the informant to develop phantom touch, which lets someone feel the sense of touch in VR. And she did that so she could hurt them online. But it doesn't stop there. She claims that she ended 5 lives herself. And whether it's true or not, it doesn't really matter. The claim alone terrifies the members to a point that some of them start to fear Alyssa and regret ever joining the guild. And this would go on for quite a while until in early 2022, some of Alyssa's victims reach out to Brandon, who made the video about it. And he eventually actually goes undercover and exposes the whole guild. And after millions of people watch the video and see Alyssa's behavior, the Discord server gets deleted and the guild itself eventually disappears. This next person is probably one of the most disturbing people out there.
I do not have a thing for humans. I am more attracted to dogs.
This is hypnotist Sappho, also known as Valerie. At the time, she was a 21-year-old, relatively small content creator in the furry community. And in the summer of 2021, she would start making content in VRChat, doing hypnosis or quote-unquote therapy sessions. With these therapy sessions ranging from group sessions with multiple people to one-on-one things. And within these sessions, some would be appropriate and safe for work, and some would be very non-safe for work. According to herself, she would often go up to people in VRChat and purr, kiss, and tease them without much regard, because according to her, she has a very affectionate personality, making a lot of the people around her uncomfortable. She, however, would take the innocent therapy sessions and upload them on her YouTube channel, which is how she was able to grow her following. This was Sappho on the surface level though, just a VRChat person doing hypnosis. Behind the scenes though, she would meet Gray over VRChat, somewhere between July and September. A teenager who most definitely wasn't of age. They would first start talking more regularly on Discord after they met on VRChat, but as time passed, it would escalate to them cuddling online, where she would position herself in the role of a mother within their Discord chats and on VRChat. And unfortunately, it would not stay at cuddling sessions. These VR meetups would turn inappropriately really quickly, and considering Gray's age, this was very disturbing. Fortunately though, as time passed, Gray eventually realized what was going on. I mean, it was kind of borderline illegal, and so he decided to report the situation to the admins of the specific VRChat world they visited. And since there was plenty of footage that I can't be showing backing this up, Sappho would not only be banned from the worlds in VRChat, but would also be permanently banned on the VRChat Discord. And I wish I could say this would be the end, but it's far from it. Following this ban, Sappho decided to create her own Discord server, with one of the Discord channels being solely dedicated to drawn images of animals in an inappropriate way. One of the mods, called Matcha Tiger, decided to confront Sappho on this, essentially asking if she was a person who was attracted to animals. But she would go on and say that she only respected the community as a quote-unquote therapist and doesn't think of it as anything wrong. After Matcha decided to come out with this chat and leak their conversation, Sappho decided to come out herself with her own statement. On September 11th, 2021, Sappho would post a video titled "Coming Out About Things," which was a 36-minute rant where she admits to being attracted to animals. And she tries to justify her love for animals by comparing it to the LGBTQ community, saying that they used to be much less accepted than nowadays, which was the same for her. Which is of course not the best comparison, since animals can't consent. This video would gain her a ton of backlash from all corners of the internet, including the furry community. But Sappho wouldn't step down and make an apology video, but she doubled down instead. Skipping over her response music video to the haters, she would start an organization called Adults Engagement for Tolerance and Acceptance North America, short ZNA, a group that was supposed to act as a safe space for people like her to meet and talk. But this organization would crumble less than 2 months later, due to somebody within the group laundering the donation funds into their own wallet. And this still wouldn't be the end of Sappho's journey though. You gotta know, Sappho first denied all the allegations of being attracted to people not of age and doing stuff with them. But on December 13th, Sappho would admit on Twitter to being a MAP, which stands for Minor Attracted Person, by making multiple posts saying that the age of consent is an iffy thing. Not surprisingly, this would lead to her Twitter account being suspended, while she would later also be caught talking inappropriately to other people not of age, including exchanging explicit images and voice messages. Now, according to Sappho herself, the reason why she is the way she is stems from her troubling childhood, where her stepfather, among other individuals, would treat her very badly. But if that's actually true, nobody really knows.